Do you have an older record player or an older record changer and don't know how to operate it? Well, stick around. This video is going to show you how to operate them. We're going to go over several different models and see how they compare to each other. First thing you would want to do is figure out how to turn the unit on. A lot of these smaller units from the late 50s have the power wired directly to the turntable. So when you turn the turntable on, it gives power and starts turning, as well as gives power to the amp and turns it on as well. Some of the bigger units from this time period, or even some of the combo units from the 60s and even 70s, they will probably have a separate power switch. For example, this larger combo unit was offered with a radio tuner, and it won't do anything until you turn the amp on. For example, the turntable's in the on position right now, but won't do anything until you power the unit up. Usually these will have some sort of pilot light to remind you that they're on, because they will not turn themselves off at the end of a record, just like that little one that we just saw. This very dirty 70s Panasonic unit is very similar, where the turntable is currently on, but it won't do anything until you power up the whole unit. This one, however, being a small late 50s RCA unit, is wired directly to the turntable. So down here on this bottom switch, when you turn it on, it gives everything power. Since this unit has the power wired directly to the turntable and doesn't have a separate on-off switch or power switch, we can skip that step. The next thing you will want to do is figure out the speed you're trying to operate at. This one has 16 RPM, 33 RPM, 45 RPM, and 78 RPM. For your 12-inch LPs like this, most of those are going to be 33. Some of them will be 45s. Some of these smaller records with the large hole in the middle, those are almost always 45 RPM. And then the 10-inch in diameter, the real thick ones, the older shellac records, those are 78s. On this unit, to change the speed, the outer knob, you can grab it and set it to the speed you want. Some of the units will have an N, which stands for neutral, and I'll cover that a little bit later. Some turntables and record changers may have the speed as a slider somewhere. Some of them may have it as a knob somewhere on a separate control. Again, this RCA has the speed and the on-off controls in the same area. You will notice that these changers often have a very long spindle, and they'll usually have a separate arm around the top to stabilize the records once you stack them on there. You can stack one, you can oftentimes stack several on these changers in order to start playing music. To load a record, lift the stabilizer arm and swing it out of the way. Take one or however many records you want to listen to, place it on the spindle, and lower it, and it will catch on that little spot on the post, and then you can swing the stabilizer arm back over and then drop it onto the record. At this point, you may need to tell the turntable what size your records are. A lot of these late 50s turntables like this one automatically detect the record as it's being lowered onto the platter. Other turntables from this era may have a separate slide control for the size record or may have a separate button. This 70s BSR turntable doesn't have an automatic size detecting feature, so you have to tell it manually with this slider right here. In this case, we don't need to, again, because this turntable detects the size automatically. Now, whether your turntable is a late 50s RCA like this one, or maybe a 1970s European model or Japanese model, if it's an automatic changer, they all work in pretty much the same way. As I turn this on, it will move over to the reject position. It will drop the record, move the tone arm over, and start playing the record. While nearly all record changers work and operate pretty much the same way, they might be labeled differently. The turntable that we looked at earlier, the late 50s RCA, was labeled off, on, and reject. Well, this one works about the same way, but it's labeled differently. This one's labeled stop, start, and auto. And then, of course, you have a speed selector on the front here. To operate this one works the same way as the other one. Turn it on, which grabs to the auto section. It will return to start, or again on, and then drop the record and go from there. This late 50s Colaro turntable in this Columbia console works about the same way. It has start, stop, and reject on this knob here on the right, with a speed control on the left. This unit has a neat feature that allows you to manually turn it on without using any of the auto features. This turntable uses the tone arm to come up and detect the size of the record. This late 60s ELAC has a speed control on the left here, and you can look through the size or the speed through this window here. And instead of having a start and a stop and an auto control, it actually has buttons to do these. These bottom 3 buttons are for the size of record that you wish to listen to, and this top one being a stop or return. Now, if you have multiple records stacked up like I do here, it will only drop one at a time. Once it gets towards the end of the first record, it will understand that it's at the end of its travel, it will pick up the tone arm, move it out of the way, and then drop the next record automatically. Now, if it's in the middle of a record and you want to go ahead and advance to the next record, then you can just go ahead back to the start and stop controls and hit reject. That will finish this record, move the tone arm out of the way, drop the next one, and then go from there. At the end of the record, the tone arm will spin inwards. The changer will understand that it is at the end of the record, and it will turn the unit off itself, assuming that it's the last record. Now, if the record stabilizer arm is up and pushed out of the way like it is right now, at the end of a record, the turntable or the changer will not understand that it is the last record, and it will try to replay this one. So if you want to make sure that it turns itself off when it's done, you need to make sure that this arm is fully dropped. If it is the last record, you can hit the reject control one more time, and again it'll turn itself off completely. Now, to listen to 45 RPM records like these, you're going to need a 45 RPM adapter. A lot of these changers from the 50s and 60s and even 70s came with a 45 RPM adapter, again to fit these records with the larger hole. These RCAs have it tucked down in this little cubby right there. Here's one from a 1970s BSR turntable. It looks completely different from the RCA one, but it does the same thing. You may find your 45 RPM adapter clipped somewhere within the console. If yours is missing, you can usually still find them on eBay if you know what you're looking for. Otherwise, you may come across some of these. This yellow one right here, these clip into the record itself, and this is one that I swiped off of a newer turntable. You just slip it over the post, and you can play it in kind of a manual style. These will not work with any automatic changer. Again, these RCAs are in this little cubby here on the turntable, and the way that these are supposed to work is there's foam underneath it, and you can push and turn these 90 degrees one way or the other, and it will slide right out. Now, the original foam is usually gone on these things, and it may be really difficult to get out. I just find whatever foam's going to work, and I stuff some down in there. To put it back, again, make sure that the logo is pointed towards the front of the device, and you can drop it in there, and you'll hear it click when you press. You want to make sure that it clicks in there and is not sticking up. As your records are turning, you do not want them rubbing on this guy. To install a 45 RPM adapter, take it in your hand, and you can see this one says front. You want to place it towards the front. A lot of these will have an arrow of some sort explaining where to put these, and this just slides right over the center spindle of the turntable. And once you've done this, it works exactly the same as the rest of them. Take your records, I've got 2 here, place them over. Again, don't forget that stabilizing arm. Set your speed, again these are 45 RPM records, and then do it as normal. Again, if yours is one of those turntables where you have to change the size, go ahead and do that. This one does it automatically. Now you can tell this one's a little bit loud and probably could use a little bit of oil to quiet it back down. But again, all the features are going to work exactly the same. Hit reject to go to the next record. And hit reject again to turn the system off. Now, just a word on the neutral speed control on some of these later 50s and early 60s turntables. The reason it has a neutral setting is so that for longer periods of time you can actually take the pressure off of the drive wheel. So with it in gear like it is right now, there is a spring putting tension on that drive wheel, and over time, if it doesn't move at all, it could actually dent the drive wheel or put an indentation in that, and that's going to cause playback issues. And one of the ways you can tell is if I turn this, you can see that it only spins a little bit before it stops turning. If we move it over to neutral, which in this case is between 78 and 45, it's a lot easier to freewheel, and again, that's because it's taken the pressure off of that drive wheel. And again, this is really for if you're going to not use it for several months or longer. To be honest, I'm really bad about putting these in neutral, and I've never had a problem with them, but I could definitely see over a period of several years that it could cause problems. So that's what that's there for. Now, if your turntable or record changer doesn't have an in setting or a neutral setting, it's probably because it doesn't need it. A lot of these turntables around this time will automatically pull that drive wheel away when the unit is powered off. For some reason, the RCA units didn't do that. So that's probably why yours doesn't have it if you've got a slightly different version. Now, a little bit about troubleshooting. Depending on what type of model you have, whether it's a combo unit or it's got a tuner or whatever it is, if you're trying to run the turntable or the changer and you're not getting any sound out of it, it could be several different things. Well, you want to make sure that if it has some type of source selector, you want to make sure that's set to phono or something like that. This one doesn't have any selector like that, but it does have this switch here for phono and stereo. RCA had a neat way, if you had 2 of these, like one of them being a record player, the other one maybe is a reel-to-reel, you could hook them up and play left and right stereo. One of the ones I showed downstairs a little bit earlier, it has, again, a large selector switch up at the top to switch between radio and other things that you might plug into it. Sometimes if you have cruddy records on here, like if you have a very warped record, they will not play well, especially if you're stacking them. If the one under the one you're trying to play is very warped, then you may have a friction issue and it may start sliding around. I call that a burnout. You definitely don't want that. It's not good for your record. It's not really good for anything, so make sure that's not happening. Now, these troubleshooting tips really only work if the unit that you're trying to work on or that you're trying to work with has been refurbished or restored. If you just bought one of these things from a flea market or an antique store and it hasn't been gone through and you're trying to follow this video and get it to work, it's probably not going to work. You're going to have to find somebody to take it to, like me, who will go through it and fix it up for you, or do a bunch of reading on the internet. There's tons of information out there on these. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. I might not have covered exactly what kind of turntable or record changer you have, but chances are it works fairly similar to one of the ones that I've shown here. So again, thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe. I release a video about once every 3 years, so yeah, check back for more. Thanks.